Next stop everywhere.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast and occasional Torchwood podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the basement of solitude, still hiding out from the coronavirus. Still, but hopefully for not too much longer, at least. And otherwise, joined here by my wonderful partner in time, and who seems to have lost some height, according to his camera, Jesse Jackson. How you doing, Jesse?
I am good, Charles. Yes, I am constantly adjusting my webcam because it keeps getting moved as I walk around and move stuff on the desk. But I am good.
I can see Jesse's eyes.
Yes. We are hanging out. Texas is starting to open. Don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but it is what it is. I'm reading you and the lovely Lori's post on Facebook about Ohio opening up.
Yeah,
and so
we'll see how that goes. And
we're just kind of getting through this one step at a time. But today we are finishing up Torchwood Children of Earth, and I am pumped.
Yeah, we're finishing up, not just that, but we're also finishing up one last time. Torchwood Month. So, yes. And joining us, thankfully, here at Next Stop Everywhere for episode 182. You loved her as we struggled through our horrible audio back in episode 180. And coming back to hopefully get a much better audio quality. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, Holly Mack from the Five-ish Fangirls Podcast. How you doing, Holly?
Hi guys, I'm doing good.
Yay.
I'm glad to be back.
We are so glad you're back. And yeah. So everybody, fingers crossed that the audio holds up. So far, we're doing okay, but you never know how these things could go because Skype. And
yes.
Exactly. So we got lucky last week with Christine. Let's see if we can make it 2 in a row. But
we're going to try.
But Holly, we're so glad to have you back because I know. I'm sure Jesse feels the same way. We felt horrible that you were doing great, and we just had such horrible audio. And so hopefully now we can give you your proper due that you deserve.
We made it through. I think you're being harder on us than it deserves, Charles. We made it through.
Yeah.
It wasn't that horrible. Yeah. So trust me.
But Holly, how you've been doing these past couple of weeks? Did you happen to tune in and listen to Christine help us talk about days 3 and 4 of Children of Earth?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes, she did awesome. She did awesome.
She did good. She did a fine job. We're obviously very happy, but it's great. We feel very blessed. I think that we get to talk about this with people like you and Christine and I'm sure Jesse, being Torchwood guy, has been pretty happy with our discussions for the past several weeks.
I have. I've really enjoyed it, and I like the ending more than I remember liking it. It's kind of funny. I was more disappointed in day 3 than I remember.
Right.
And I remember liking the end of day 5. I remember being very, very unhappy with the ending. And this time, while I don't love it, I understood it and enjoyed it a lot.
Maybe because of our discussion, we kind of helped get you to hopefully reevaluate some things. Maybe we'll
Maybe
see.
so, yeah.
And Holly, what was your general reaction to rewatching Day 5?
I completely forgot one of the things that happened towards the end, and I was just like, oh, that's right. I mean, I kind of remembered liking it, and then coming back and rewatching it because it's been a while since I watched Day 5. It's just like, this sets it up, and what's going to happen from here on out? Is it just going to be Gwen and Rhys, or is it going to be the end of Torchwood, or is Jack finally going to come back without jumping too far ahead? They kind of wrapped it up in a nice little bowl.
Yeah.
If they would have decided not to continue on and do Miracle Day and then just go right into the big finish.
Well, I'm sure they were thinking, especially Russell T Davies was thinking, I don't know if Torchwood's going to be back. And so this was probably written as this could be the finale. Not knowing if they were going to be back. I know that I got some notes about that in my trivia section, which I'll save for a little bit later. But a little more information about that. But I have to think that Russell T Davies, it was kind of keeping that in at least in perspective that, well, maybe there's a chance that it may not come back, and so this kind of sort of serves as an ending, although it's not exactly the ending we wanted. And turns out it wasn't the ending after all, because we did get the new I want to say the new world, Miracle Day. We did get Miracle Day, so that sort of gave us another ending to Torchwood, at least on a little more upbeat ending than this one. That's for sure. Yeah. All right, so obviously this is written by Russell T Davies, directed by Euros Lyn, 5th episode from Torchwood Series 3 in 2009, starring, as we whittle the cast down further, John Barrowman as Captain Jack Harkness and Eve Myles as Gwen Cooper. And with Kai Owen as sort of not really wanting to be a Torchwood member, but sort of a Torchwood member as Rhys Williams. So, but I know we've talked a lot. We've talked about how serious this is. Jesse, any general thoughts before we get into our main discussion you want to cover, or?
So I just want to
anything you want to address right off the top?
Yeah, I think they stuck the landing. I think that, we've talked many times through this discussion in the poker analogy, right? They were all in. And I don't think Russell T Davies cheated us. I think he led all the hard storylines to a very
definitive,
I don't want to say definitive ending. Yes.
Yes.
I don't want to call it a satisfying ending.
Right.
But I think a definitive ending, and an ending that pays off. He doesn't cheat the audience. He doesn't cheat the characters. And like I said, I'm not happy with the ending because I'm always going to want a happy ending, right?
Captain Kirk wants to chime in on this.
Exactly. But I think it did. I think he served the story and the viewers well. Okay,
that's fair. Holly, how about you? Any initial thoughts before we get into our main discussion?
I have to agree with Jesse. I mean, the ending, it didn't fall flat. It went out and said it and accomplished what Russell had set out to do, I think.
Yeah, I felt that Russell, like I said, it's obviously, I don't think this is the ending that any of us wanted, but with Russell, obviously being, at least with Stephen Moffat, co-creator of Jack Harkness, I have to think, this is the story he wanted to tell, whether we were satisfied with it or not. And so he probably felt that at least, he got the chance to tell the story he wanted. to get out there. And now the question is obviously, as we find out with Miracle Day, that obviously he continues that story, but I have to think that he wanted to at least get at least this particular story of Jack's told before the end. And so the question is now, I think now, well, is it satisfying enough? And for me personally, it wasn't satisfying enough. But and thankfully, John Barrowman's was fortunate enough to reprise Captain Jack on Doctor Who, and recently in Doctor Who Series 12 and other Torchwood audios, and so it's not exactly the send off and for the team, and there's always still a chance that we could see them again, possibly in the future. All right. So I do have a little bit of trivia before we get started. Originally, the final shot of the episode of Day 5 apparently was supposed to be to feature a computer screen reading the words Torchwood status, terminated, referring to the end of all Torchwood operations in the UK by the end of the miniseries. But apparently, Russell T Davies took this out at a very late stage because he didn't want to give the impression that the series had been canceled. And even though he knew it might. So I think at this point, maybe even RTD Russell T Davies, he didn't even know that if the show was going to come back or not. So, but he kind of probably wanted to leave a little hope for fans. So, all right. Have 4 topics I want to talk about. I've shared them with Holly, but because I want to give her a heads up. And topic number 1, I didn't give her my little theme, or no, I don't really have a theme this week, but I do have some cute topic titles I like to think. So topic number 1, I want to call, "Hey, teachers, leave them kids alone." And this is going to refer to the quote-unquote inoculations. And I also want to talk about John Frobisher's rather uncomfortable decision about when faced with the fear of losing his family, his kids. And so, Holly, since you're our wonderful special guest companion, let's start with you first, if you don't mind, Jesse. So, any
you
thoughts?
Don't mind, ladies first, please.
All right. So, Holly, do you have any thoughts about the inoculation? Their big plan to cover up the fact that, hey, we're going to take all your kids, and we're going to say that, well, hey, those inoculations, well, maybe they just, they had a bad reaction and they died. Whoops. So.
Nice way to try to sugarcoat it, but I'm thinking a lot of parents are kind of cottoning on to the fact that they're trying to feed us a line of something. You really don't trust them. They haven't been too truthful before with what's been going on. And then too with the digital 141, even before they decide we're going to group up all the kids, they were like, hey, they're not telling us the truth. They're lying.
Right. So this is kind of almost like everybody's big deep state fear conspiracy laid right out there, I think. That the government is going to come and take my kids. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I loved Rhiannon's like, nope, you guys are staying put. I don't care if they say school's back in session. You go round up our next door neighbors. I'll continue keeping care of the kids free of charge. And of course her husband's like, wait a minute. And she's just like, hush.
It's like, we could be making 10 quid a kid.
Right. And Rhiannon's just like, I don't care about the money. We're keeping these kids safe. So good on her. Plus, I think she was doing it for Ianto too, considering that the sacrifice, she doesn't know right now, but sacrifice that he made and telling her, hey, keep the kids safe, whatever you do.
I would personally charge more than that because kids can go through a lot of food. So, you got to cover that overhead. Jesse, how about you? What are your initial thoughts on the government's inoculation story and the rounding up of all those kids?
It was so methodically evil.
Right.
They were doing all this. They had a plan. They're executing the plan. The U.S. Army is arrogantly taking over, which I assume we'll get to later.
Oh yeah.
How that kind of, you can
talk about it now if you want. But,
the prime minister later says, see, that we were lucky, not lucky that we ended up not losing the children, but lucky we have someone to blame.
Right. I do want to talk more about the blame in our third segment, but
okay, good.
Yeah.
I really, Yanto's brother-in-law, I think what was his name? Her husband?
Johnny.
Ended up actually stepping up at the end.
Oh, this is the second time. Remember, he did cover that little, Yanto and Rhiannon kind of going off by themselves. We had the neighborhood kids attack the surveillance car, as calling them pedophiles and all this, pedos. Yeah. And so now he kind of steps up again and basically leads this neighborhood revolt against the military.
Yeah, and I assume that they had threatened. Did they make that comment that the military had been threatened if they don't follow rules, their children will be added to the mix?
Yeah, you said that they will something effective like having retribution on their families.
Yeah. And so there's just not a lot of things to be proud of how these people are behaving. And I don't, I remember very strongly Frobisher's final, I remember that final act of defiance or desperation. And I remember being saddened, and I knew once we saw what that 31 was, and I saw the little box, I'm like, oh, I bet you that's a handgun.
Right. That's the one he had, Bridget, request for him, a weapon. And so what did you, since you brought it up, what was your reaction the first time you saw what Frobisher decided?
So first off, I thought it was incredibly unfair,
right,
of the prime minister to offer that, and I don't know. I think I would have tried to get in a car and get the heck out of Dodge, right?
Yes.
I would have tried something else, but I think he felt like there was no alternative. And when I watch this, you hear the 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shots,
and then the final shot.
Just enough silence, 4 shots.
Yeah.
And you could just see, and it was perfectly filmed. It was that was the right way to do it. You can almost see that he's double checking they're all 3 dead and then killing himself.
Yeah.
And it's just a horrid scene. You think about his children and his wife, the last thing they see is their father killing them. It's just chilling. And once again, Russell T Davies, this is a different level of storytelling that we're doing here, and the stakes. I was shocked when that originally happened. This time I knew it was happening, and it still made me just as sad.
Right.
And once ago, we have learned to love Peter Capaldi as the Doctor, but he's so good in this role, being the workman-like middleman that's just taking care of business, and then to be put in this situation is just just horrible.
Yeah, it was great acting when you saw how, that when he was faced with that, like, to use a Star Trek term, that no-win scenario,
Right.
that he, just that dread, that
Yes.
his fear of what the 456 might do to his daughters if they got their hands on them. Holly, how about you? I want to get your thoughts on this. What was your reaction to seeing this the first time you saw this?
First time I was completely shocked, and it's just like, wow. Because I mean, at first I thought that box. When I first saw it, I thought, oh, maybe it's going to be poison. He's going to slip it into their food, and then
he's going to betray the the government and all that, or at least take out the PM, maybe.
Do it in a more humane way, and then when you see the door close, and it's just like, oh crap, and then you hear the gunshots. And rewatching it again, it was just like his hands were tied. And you could even tell when he requested from Bridget to get the 31, you could tell that she was just like, okay, this is serious. He's got nowhere to turn. It's almost too bad that she didn't try to intervene and tell Torchwood, hey, can we up the help right now? But she knew that this was probably the only way that things were going to get
I mean,
John, even if she had to lose one of her best friends and colleagues because of it.
Yeah, and the implication was that they had an affair before,
or at least she was crushing on him, like she loved him from afar.
Well, the way she told Lois, "You're not the first." I could imply that she's seen other people have the affair with him.
Right.
I read it that they had a fling earlier.
It's certainly possible, like when they were both a lot younger, maybe. But it's hard to say whether it was they had an affair a long time ago, and she was one of the first, or she wanted that, but he never showed that interest in her, and so which is why she's resented all those women coming through over the years.
Yeah, I think
Lois
very
dismissing Lois because she was just the latest one.
Yeah, I think both stories are really palatable. I mean, I think that both are very, very realistic, and I love the idea we don't know which.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about Bridget later in our third segment. But when we I want to talk about the fallout from all that. But yeah, she obviously had some very strong feelings where Frobisher is concerned. So, but yeah, just a stellar piece of acting by Peter Capaldi. And I agree. I agree with you, Jesse. I think they shot it the right way, with the door closed. And was paced perfectly. And I also agree with you, Jesse, that I would at least, if I was in this position, I probably would have at least tried to get my family out.
Absolutely.
As I get a little echo there.
Yeah, I turned off my camera just in case that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna do mine. Turn off my camera too. Just.
Okay.
It couldn't hurt.
Yeah.
All right. Anything we didn't cover on this topic, Charles? Oh, now then Charles's camera comes on.
yeah. My camera's always been on. So yeah,
it had not been showing to me.
But I can turn it off. All right. So let's see here. Okay. So I just just faced with that decision, I probably would have tried to at least get my kids out, and we'll see. There, but maybe he felt like, there, no matter what he did, they would have caught up with him and they would have taken his kids away. I don't know. That's just my speculation. But this cover story I thought was just, it's something I could very easily see our government doing, especially these days. And so, it kind of stokes that natural fear a lot of people have of authority. and how easily it is for them to take control over a situation. And we got to see those horrific images of all those military going after the kids and chasing Gwen and all those kids down in a field, and just amazingly powerful writing by Russell T Davies in that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about that topic before we move on?
Nope.
All right. Topic number 2, feel good hit of the summer, and I want to talk about the 4, 5, 6, as we finally find out exactly why they want those kids, and I also want to talk about in this segment we need to talk about Jack's decision. We had Frobisher's decision, saw what he did, and Jack has another very difficult decision to make, and he does so with some very disturbing consequences. So, Jesse, let's start with you first this time. So, let's talk about the 4, 5, 6 first.
Okay.
And especially starting off with the revelation that we're told that the 4, 5, 6 essentially wants these kids because, hey, they get high off them.
They feel good.
Yeah,
it makes them happy.
The feel good hit of the summer, like I said. But
yeah.
What was your reaction to that?
I was really. I remember being disgusted. That, oh my God, that's the reason why. This isn't even because it helps them live longer, or it provides a disease, like a vaccine for some kind of disease. This is just pure recreational for them.
Right.
And maybe they have become addicted over the years and that's it, but it is purely recreational, and it's just chilling to hear them say that.
It seems odd, though, they've been able to make those kids last 44 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in my mind, only the
original kids
have had that. Yeah, the original kids were only for the elite.
Right.
And so the next level, the population of the 4, 5, 6 are demanding they want that too. And so that's why they're coming to stop a revolt in their world.
Right.
Because the people want they want kid power too.
That's
you.
That's a very interesting turn of phrase. Yeah, kid power.
Yes,
that brings a whole new meaning, doesn't it?
Yeah, and so it whoever's doing the voice is just so well done.
I should have it written down, but I don't.
Yeah, and we continue to, as we talk about why do sometimes the green come, against the thing.
Mm-hmm. Their little vomit spew thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, really well done. So to moving on, go ahead, Holly, talk about that, and then we'll talk about Jack.
What are your thoughts about the 4, 5, 6 in that revelation?
I was sick to my stomach when I heard that. I'm like, seriously? Because I thought along the same lines of Jesse, is that they needed the kids. There was something in them that could help them with a disease that they were facing, or heck, cheap slave labor.
Right.
They work. The human kids work better than our own, so that's why we need them, and not we're going to use them as recreational drugs. It was just
Yeah, essentially it's the 4, 5, 6 is using them as their own personal bong hits.
Yes.
And
by the way, Charles.
Yes.
Not to interrupt, but I'm going to interrupt just before I forget.
Yes.
IMDb. It is a Simon Poland.
Okay.
Is the voice? He looks like he's a pretty busy character actor. Nothing we would have. I don't think anything that we would have known him on, but looks like a pretty busy character actor.
Well, like you said, he's got a great voice for the 4, 5, 6. And,
yes.
But they're using them as like you said, as recreational drugs, which kind of explains why that one original kid that they showed looked so emaciated, like all the life had been sucked right out of him, and that's probably exactly what happened. That they're feeding off these kids, and as the 456 says, that essentially it's their chemicals that they produce, presumably in prepubescence, and that's what creates the high. And it was a very interesting twist to this story, that essentially all these guys are just, they're looking to get stoned. They come all this way. They threaten everybody. They were like, hey, turn over your kids or we're going to kill everybody, just because, hey, we want to get high.
And
go ahead, Holly.
And this was, they had asked, before we agree and sign on the dotted line, what do you want them for? And then that whole room.
Yeah.
When they hear that, I mean, you couldn't hear a pin drop, and the look of disgust on some of their faces.
Yeah. Well, they had that Colonel. It was that Colonel Adoya from Unit that was there. He's the one who finds out. I thought it was pretty funny. It was like, after everybody else is gone, this one unit colonel shows up, and it's like, okay, so what do you want these kids anyway? Why are we doing all this? And it's like, oh yeah, we want them for their, for the hit, as they say. And just the reaction on his face is like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Just horrible.
Yeah, but again, a very clever, interesting idea by Russell T. Davies.
Yes.
All right, so let's now. Obviously, the 456 are finally dealt with. We see them scamper off in a pillar of fire back to wherever it is they came from. Finally, and Captain Jack's the one who, I don't want to say saves the day, but he's the one who sends them packing. And unfortunately, it's at the cost of his own grandson. And that is I'm sure something that, I know that bothered me the first time I watched it, bothered a lot of you, probably the first time you watched it. And, and I'd love to know your thoughts. And let's start with you, Holly, on this one. What were your thoughts about what Jack did?
He was put between a rock and a hard place. It didn't get any easier seeing it again. And Jack knew he had to try to fix it, because, he had the guilt of not realizing, buying the lie of the 456 back in the 60s. And even with his daughter pleading, he knew he had to do it, even if it meant costing his relationship with his daughter and even emotionally scarring him for the rest of his immoral life. He really didn't have a whole lot of options, so I could have whapped the guy upside the head saying the kid's gonna fry. It's like, you could have used a little more tact. Why don't we try hooking you up first and seeing if the 456 will leave before I have to sacrifice my grandson?
Yeah.
That's me putting with Jack should have tried first. But
if I was Jack, I would be like, all right, send somebody out and get a kid, bring them back. A kid you don't like.
Yeah.
Bring them back.
Yeah.
It's like, so, and Jack's already estranged as it was with his daughter, Alice Carter. And obviously this doesn't help the situation at all.
Oh no.
And I have to think that, she's going to be just hating him for the rest of her life, however long that turns out to be. Jesse, what are your thoughts on this?
So you guys both have said just exactly what I was feeling. I remember originally watching this, the thought was there had to be another way. Like that there has to be like a terminal kid somewhere that was going to die anyway, that we could give them a meaningful death. Why does it have to be his grandson?
Right.
when I watched this second time, because I knew it was coming, I went and I'm not going to excuse Jack's actions whatsoever, but I am going to try to explain them. They've left Torchwood out of the loop. That if they had done this from the beginning, they might have been able to figure this out much sooner, and they would have had time to try to find, does it have to be a child, or can we do something, another child that is terminal anyway, right? But they didn't put them on to the last minute. They have reduced, they have got them where they are on a clock. They have to make a tough decision. And it, as he said, it's one child versus millions. And does it matter whether it's, because any child we use would have been someone's child, someone's son, someone's daughter, someone's grandson, someone's granddaughter. So to have the consequences of your hero saving the day, yet at the cost of, in a lot of ways, his soul, and his is just great storytelling. And so that's why this time when I watched it, I was just as angry that he had to make that decision, but I understood why, and I think that it makes, it is the exclamation point that makes why, in many people, including you, Charles's opinion, this was the very best of Torchwood.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously I've talked ad infinitum about, you know, coming at this from the writer's perspective. So I see why Russell T Davies wanted to do this particular thing, to make it personal for Jack, to give him the reason for, like, okay, so having something so traumatic that he feels he needs to leave Earth and leave Torchwood behind at the end of the episode. But I have to wonder, well, shouldn't there have been at least, maybe, instead of saying, well, we could have just got any kid and he's the only kid that's here, so let's use him. Wouldn't it have made at least a little bit more, give it a little bit more understandable if there was like an explanation that, hey, Stephen is Jack's grandson, and there's something very special about his particular body chemistry that's going to make this actually work. Like, we couldn't do it with an ordinary kid. We had to do it with Jack's grandson. And I think that would have made it a little more, I don't know, maybe palatable to fans.
So, and I will argue that I think by having it just be just the luck of the draw, if they had not captured his daughter, if they had not, because they were trying to manipulate him, that he wouldn't have been there. So not only did Jack have to choose his grandson, but he is directly responsible for him being in the circumstances where he's the only one that could pick. I get your thought, and that's not a bad thought, but I'm okay with this for those reasons.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. But yeah, just, you know, obviously it makes things very personal for Jack.
Yes.
And especially knowing that, okay, even after, hey, I killed my grandson, I still have to deal with the repercussions that I've lost my daughter forever.
Yes.
There, you know, whatever slim chance he had at reestablishing a relationship with her, pretty much out the window right now.
And
after this,
and wasn't that a powerful scene where she just stares at him, and he stares, and there's nothing to say.
Yeah,
great acting on both parts.
What's she gonna do? She can't kill him.
Yeah,
No.
Like, so.
And I also love the fact that she is partly responsible for this as well, because she is the one who convinced Johnson, look, if you need a last minute save, if the world is at stake, you need my father on the front line doing this. So she convinces Johnson. By the way, Liz May Bryce, a brilliant performance. And
As
she,
Johnson,
and so she, if she had not done that, yes, millions of children would have died, but her son wouldn't have died. But because of her pushing that, she played the sacrifice too.
Yeah, because it almost looked like they were Jack was about to attempt to talk, but then when she just walks out of the room, I think it kind of dawned on her too. It's just like, he's to blame, but I am also to blame. And
oh, so you think there was that little element of guilt in her, or was she just?
I think more anger, but I think maybe just a slight touch of guilt. I mean, it's hard to say just from the look in her eye. But you're kind of replaying things, and she.
The way I saw her as more angry than guilty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just saw her as more angry against Jack because, just that she just looked at him with such hatred for what he did, and and she couldn't even go into the room where he was dying, probably because she probably would have done whatever she could to prevent that, and then finally, she finally gets to go into the room. She cradles her son, and then she looks at Jack.
Yeah,
and it's just that look alone speaks so many volumes.
Yeah,
but really powerful stuff, and it's just it's Russell T Davies. I got to give him credit. He doesn't go for the easy out.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't. He doesn't. He doesn't come up with some big cosmic reset button. He doesn't come up with whatever MacGuffin is going to come in and everything's going to be okay and everybody's going to be happy. He doesn't go for the happy ending here at all.
Well, because I wanted. He was only mostly dead. He wasn't, like a Princess Bride thing, right? Like,
did you think that? You bring up a good point. Did you think that Stephen was going to somehow come back like Jack did?
Or at least that they weren't going to squeeze every bit of life out of him, that there would be a spark that somehow and he would survive.
Like chance, and then they get him to the hospital, and then he's gonna make it. Yeah,
there was no Disney magic happy ending.
There was none whatsoever. No.
He went right for the jugular and with the jaw speeding twist.
Yeah, and I would love to have been there when he wrote this, because I would love to know if he was just cackling with delight as he was typing this, knowing what it would do to viewers, or was he just like, I can't believe I'm going to get away with this, just like sitting there typing away, going, this is crazy, and I'm like, am I wrong for doing this? I got to do this. Like telling himself, trying to convince himself that he was making the right creative decision. So just would love to have been a fly on the wall there.
Yeah,
at that moment.
That would be a good question to ask him, because I'm sure he was like, boy, as a writer, this is great. But at the same time, boy,
if anybody
I can't
knows,
believe...
if he's made a statement, please drop us a line, because I would love to know what his thought process was while writing that. But because it was just, it's something we, like a lot of us, you never get to see something this brutal and cold, and Jack has to, speaking of brutal and cold, he basically has to shut every impulse he has off, because he's focused on saving the day, even though he knows, what it's going to do to everyone, especially his daughter.
Yes.
So Jack does not make, when push comes to shove, you have to almost give Jack a little credit here for making that tough call. And that's probably one of the toughest calls ever, in my opinion. All right. Anything else about this topic?
No.
Guess not. All right.
Yeah.
As we all sit here in stunned silence,
Yeah.
recoiling, trying to recover from this rather traumatic moment. All right. So topic number 3, and this is a quote taken directly out of today's news. See if you can guess who said it. I don't take responsibility at all. And this I want to talk about. That's my topic name for. I want to talk about the fallout from the Cobra cabinet. The our little cabal behind the scenes, including PM Green, who is confronted by certain Bridget Spears, played deliciously by Susan Brown, and as Bridget kind of pulls a fast one on the PM because, hey, Bridget's got, wants revenge for what happened to her big wannabe boyfriend, John Frobisher. So, Jesse, what are your thoughts? First off,
I loved how the Prime Minister gets his at the end. My only disgust was that the person who's like, "Oh, I'm going to step up," was just as horrid, right? I don't remember the cabinet member.
You're talking Denise Riley.
Yeah, because she's the one who originally said, "Well, what are the school tables for anyway?"
Exactly.
So I hate the idea that
she's the one who steps in.
Yeah, that she may get something because of that. But I was glad that he did get a little bit of this back too, and I loved how that Bridget had her revenge, that she we've talked about just in this episode, either she loved him afar or loved him in the past, but they had a history, and for her to make sure that he did not die in vain, that the Prime Minister, who was horrid, I mean, because as he says, we got lucky because we're going to be able to blame the Americans. Not we got lucky that the children didn't die. We got lucky that Torchwood helped us. It's like, hey, yep, they're going to be mad at someone. We can blame America. We are good. As you guys can't see, I'm clapping my hands, putting it up.
Yeah.
I am. We are free and clear, and that's just so disgusting.
Like
yeah.
Yep. And Holly, how about you? What was your reaction to Bridget's revenge for Frobisher?
I loved it because at first, when she comes in to see Lois and starts spinning her tale, I'm like, okay, there's a reason behind this. What? And then when we finally get her coming in to see Green, and after that, she's like, something else before you forget. I recorded it. He's like, how? I helped myself to the Torchwood Tech contact lenses. And I was fist pumping, jumping up and down. I'm just like, oh, revenge. So sweet. And I agree. Denise Riley's not even any better. I mean, to paraphrase Pete Townsend, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Pretty much. Hopefully maybe a little bit better, but I mean,
marginally.
Yeah. And I mean, Bridget did awesome. You don't mess with her.
Yeah.
She's not the bad side of.
I kind of like the fact that Bridget got to get revenge for Lois as well.
Yes.
Because Lois ends up taking the fall for most of after everything goes down. She gets thrown in the slammer, put up on treason charges, and so she's essentially taken completely off the board. Now we're told later on that presumably she gets out, or at least that Denise Riley was going to do something about getting her out of jail or something to that effect. And
so, if I can step in just for a minute, Charles, the
go
only
ahead.
thing that Denise has going for her is
Right.
she does think critically and logically during a time of crisis.
Right.
You can't argue with her initial assessment, and even though you are horrified by it, you understand what she's saying. So the only thing you can hope is that she's going to be able to lead them through this aftermath and make the tough choices. And we hope that Lois will be released and everything back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. It feels that I mean, obviously Denise would not be the ideal person, but obviously Green had to go. Somebody has to
Yes.
step in and fill that void. We're never really told that she actually gets to become the new prime minister.
No.
So we don't know. Maybe somebody else got elected PM after Green, but presumably Denise Riley had her eyes set on the job.
Yeah.
But again, another person, now that I think about it, also using those contact lenses. I really hope they wash those and sterilize those.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because Bridget would be the third pair of eyes those lenses have been in.
Mm-hmm.
After Gwen, after
Lois.
After Lois. So just I'm a little sensitive to that. I wear contact lenses, so maybe that's just where my brain goes. But I hope they clean them just for sanitary sake. But I just thought that was interesting. Presumably everything that Green says, that comes out in the public, and I kind of would love to know what what the UK public would have thought of that, but sadly we never got to see that.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to see a little public outcry over that, at least.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else about how everything shook out with Lois or Bridget or the PM or anybody?
Nope, not for me.
Okay. Holly, not from you either? Okay.
Nope.
All right. Final topic. Topic number 4, 6 months later. So we pick up at the very end after everything's all shaken out. Jack, we find out, we're told, has traveled the world for 6 months, but still isn't over what happened. And that's not something you got to shake off rather easily like that. And he basically arranges for one final meeting, or at least with Gwen, who's now a bit preggers than last we saw her, and Rhys on this hill at night. And so I want to get everyone's thoughts on Jack basically saying goodbye for now to Gwen. So Holly, let's start with you. What are your thoughts about Jack's goodbye and Torchwood disbanding?
I thought it was probably the best way to handle it, even though Gwen tried her best to convince Jack to saying it wasn't your fault. Don't run away. You have us.
Type. Somebody's typing.
And Jack's just like, I'm not ready to come back. I still need to shake, like he said, shake the dust off my boots, and it's going to take a while. I mean, it's almost like he's taking the role of the doctor and just like, hey, I need to travel,
right,
go alone. And maybe that's what he's, and not basically telling Gwen, hey, I need to find the doctor. I need to sit down, have a talk with him, pour out my soul, find out if I did the right thing. Is this going to make me look any less in his eyes considering the circumstance? Because I think there's a lot of respect with Jack and the doctor, and Jack values the Doctor's opinion of him just from the one episode in season 3 towards the tail end, where Jack's in that one room working and talking with the Doctor after the Doctor finds out, hey, he's still alive because of what the Daleks had done to him in season 1. So.
I think you bring up a really good point, because there's almost kind of like an interesting parallel going on here between Captain Jack and the Doctor, because just like the Doctor, Captain Jack is running away from his problems after something horrible has happened, and he's just wanting to leave and travel and never return. And so, so it seems like, very reminiscent of what the Doctor did originally when he and Susan first left Gallifrey, and presumably, as since Susan doesn't have any parents, after presumably something horrible happened on Gallifrey, that the Doctor was just like, I need to go on the run from my own people, and I'm taking Susan with me. So I just thought that was a really interesting parallel between those two characters.
I've never thought about that, Charles. That's a great parallel. And we get to see David Tennant's Doctor say goodbye to Captain Jack, right?
Because he turns up right after this scene. The next time we see him is in the End of Time Part 2, when the 10th Doctor's on his farewell tour.
Yes.
Across time and space, and Jack tosses off a salute to the Doctor in that bar where we find Jack kind of hitting on none other than Alonzo Frame.
Yes.
Ensign from the starship Titanic.
Yeah, the Doctor sets them up, kind of.
Yes.
So I loved this ending. I love Rhys talking about how gorgeous she looks. There was earlier a scene where Gwen says Torchwood ruins your life, and Rhys is like, how can you say that? And they talk about having children in this bad of a world. And he remains this optimist.
Well, there was that one moment during that discussion where Gwen is just feeling so down about everything. She mentions the possibility that she might terminate the pregnancy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And which I found, and Rhys obviously is horrified by this. He's like, "Wait, you what?"
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then later.
No, hold on. Holly, what did you want to say? I'm sorry.
And then later on, she tells Rhys, "Hey, I didn't mean a word of it. We're keeping the baby. We're gonna go on, become a family." And Rhys is like, "Okay." Gwen was just trying to reassure him. I think all the stress of the situation that was going on, it just got the better of her, and she just needed to vent.
Rhys, don't preach. I'm keeping my baby.
Right.
To paraphrase Madonna there a little bit. Mm-hmm. So Jesse, were you concerned at all that Gwen was going to seriously terminate that pregnancy?
No, not at all. I was convinced that
Kirk.
Yeah. I was convinced that she wasn't. She was just feeling discouraged at the time. Rhys's optimism and their love is something that I adore about Torchwood. It would be really easy to show an unhappy marriage, but they have shown that really well consistently all 4 seasons. And while she adores Jack, it is not in while there may even be a hint of romance there, it's something that she knows it's just unrealistic. And Rhys is real, and Rhys adores her, and she adores Rhys. So I think Gwen would have jumped at that given the chance. Maybe, but only for a one-night stand. I think she knows. I think to scratch that itch, but I think she knows what this means and the relationship. I think That's at least my opinion. And I love the fact that Jack seems to just, he wants to just,
he just wants to get the hell out of there.
There's a country music classic, Eddie Arnold, "Make the World Go Away." And
right.
And I think that's just, he wants the world to go away. He just wants to go. And we get his little machine, his little teleporter back, and he gets to go off.
The vortex manipulator.
Yeah. Yep. And
now he can go off and have like space martinis.
Absolutely.
And pangalactic gargle blasters.
Yes. So I thought it was the right. I thought it was the right ending, that this decision he made, and that once again, this is why I like this more than I remember liking it, is one, I think he had to make the decision, and 6 months later, he's still wrestling with that decision. And in his mind, what else could I have done? What else could I have done? What else could I have done? Replaying that scene in his mind over and over again, and feeling the weight of that decision. And to his mind, it was a bad bargain. 1 for $1 million is a bad bargain. He knew he had to make it, but he's weighed down by it. So it was a great way to end the series. I sent you guys a couple of links, or at least one link where Russell T. Davies talked about when he wrote this, he wasn't sure if they'd ever get another season. And so he specifically wrote that with, if we have this an ending, this is a good ending. So great stuff.
Holly, what about you? What are your thoughts on Jack's goodbye to Gwen and the presumed ending for the show?
I thought Russell handled it really well. I mean, just the way in the goodbye and just that grin before he goes off and disappears, and Rhys putting that comforting arm around Gwen's shoulder. It was just like, Torchwood may be done for now with Jack and you and myself as a quasi member, but just kind of the way he like moved her along, it's just like, who's not to say, never say never. There might be a chance that after a while, after Gwen has the baby, that she could maybe possibly think about starting it up again and recruiting and just kind of being the mentor, or just saying, hey, we've run the course. Let's just try to live a normal non-alien life, even though Cardiff, like, but if that happening, not so good.
Yeah, Gwen is just completely distraught. She's crying profusely. And I'm sure Deweese is going like, well, I'm right here. It's just Jack's leaving. It's not like he couldn't come back at some point. But Gwen is feeling like she's going to never see Jack again.
Right.
And Jack is, he's basically trying to distance himself a little bit. And, she's telling him like, you can't leave. And he's like, yes, I can. Watch me. And then he just kind of beams out. He's like, Captain Jack, out, and drops the mic and beams off. I think it's about, considering the story and everything that happened and all the stuff that we've talked about, it's probably the best ending that Russell T. Davies could have realistically given after all these traumatic events. You think about it, because, they lost Yanto, Jack had to kill his own grandson. It's just too much, and so Jack, obviously it was a way to get Jack off into space, and set him up for, to meet the 10th Doctor out there in the end of time. But, it almost like, they needed to separate at this point because so much had happened.
Yeah, I do. I think you set this up that if you never get another season of Torchwood, he's out there if you decide you want to use him on the Doctor with Doctor Who. But if you don't ever use that character again, you have a satisfying ending. So yeah, really, really well done. I agree.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts about this final episode of Torchwood: Children of Earth? Holly, anything that you think we overlooked?
No, I think we covered everything.
All right. And Jesse, how about you? Any other thoughts?
The only thing I was really glad is, I'd ask, where's the Doctor, right?
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
I'm really glad that Gwen shares that statement. I don't know if I agree with that's what the Doctor does, but it's certainly a great sentiment to say, and it was a nice way to acknowledge that the Doctor exists in this world, and a reason, if that's not the actual reason, why he wasn't here to save the day. I really like that little point, and I thought it was the perfect way to start the episode. Just a really. I am so glad we watched this, Charles, and I think, and I love that we've had Holly and Christine with us. This is just, I think, a great example of a wonderful example of great storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, once again, this is Torchwood, I think, personally, at its finest.
Oh yeah.
Even horrible events and all, this is still as good as it gets, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and this shows you how well a mini series or mini season can be written in 5 episodes.
Right. Yeah, I know. I'm sure, Russell T Davies and John Barrowman, they were disappointed that, hey, they didn't get that 13 episode third season, but maybe the story, maybe it worked better with less episodes.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously they got rid of all the filler that normally comes along with a longer season, and it was, as a result, these 5 episodes were extremely tight and filled with plot. There wasn't really a dull moment going on here.
No.
So
Absolutely.
maybe it kind of benefited as a result. So
I absolutely do think it was.
Okay. All right. If nobody else has any other final thoughts, let's talk about our favorite quotes. Jesse, got any favorite quotes this time?
Yeah, there's not too many. There's a lot of long that are really good. I think the Doctor discussion, is really good. I think
I've got that.
Bridget talking about the story of why John Frobisher is good.
That was
so.
Pretty
Yeah,
long.
I
was going to use that, but I'm like, damn, that's
long. So I'm gonna. The only one I'm going to use, which I think was really funny, is with Gwen is in the car with PC Andy, and she goes, "I can't tell you," and he goes, "Hey, I'm the police." And she goes, "Right now, I need you to drive this car. And if I told you," and he says, "What? Don't you bloody hate people who don't finish their sentences?" So I thought
that was I love that quote.
Yeah, a really nice little moment of humor in an episode that did not have a lot of humor. Rightly so. I'm not criticizing it, but I do love that.
There was the occasional light moment.
Yeah, I love that. The Andy saying, look, I hate people that don't finish their sentences. Like, okay, just why would just say I can't tell you, period. And it was great. I love that.
Yeah, he probably thought that that at that time the tension needed to be lifted a little bit with a lighter moment, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. Holly, how about you? Got any quotes you like?
I have one, and this is at the end with the 6-month time jump. Gwen's giving Jack the vortex manipulator. got a new strap too. Cost me 50 quid from Rhys, and then Jack kind of groaning, bill me.
I did like that
Nice.
scene. That was
Yeah.
nice.
I mean,
Yeah, that was good.
just to, I think Rhys kind of did that grump to try to get Jack to kind of smile a little bit.
Yeah. I thought I liked the exchange between Frobisher and Gwen, where Frobisher's going, "What do you think Torchwood is now? Do you think you're still players?" And Gwen says, "We can try."
Yeah, that
And
was good.
Frobisher replies, "We're at a tipping point right now. Civilization's about to fall into hell. You want to start that descent a little earlier? Go ahead." And then lastly, Jack's one of his final words to Gwen, where he's talking about Steven and Ayento and Owen and Tosh and Susie and all of them because of me. And Gwen says, "But you saved us, didn't you?" And Jack replies, "I began to like it, and look what I became. Still, I have lived so many lives. It's time to find another one."
Yeah, and that was I think that's rightly said. Like I said,
Yeah.
It was a great ending to. If that had been the last we've seen of the character, it would have been a great way to end the character.
Yeah. Any other quotes from anybody?
Not me.
All right. So what's everybody's ratings? Holly, let's start with you. What's your rating for this one?
9 out of 10 brand new wrist straps.
Yeah, nice. And Jesse, how about you?
So I'm tempted to give it a higher, but I've got to have a little bit of happiness to be a 10. Though this is really, really, it is brilliant. I'm going to give it 9 out of 10 doctors turning their backs.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Nice.
That's a good one. We are in sync once again. I give it 9 out of 10. You guys kind of took mine, so I'm going to go with awkward inoculations.
Nice.
So yeah, we're completely in sync. You kind of like your 10 to be a little bit more upbeat than this, but you have to give enough credit that, even if it's a bit of a downer, it's well written. It's a well written downer. How's that?
Yeah. I was really tempted to give it a 10 but I just was like, it's just so hard. But yeah, great. Yeah.
All right. Now, and it's been a few episodes since I did this, but I do have a reverse the polarity segment.
Please.
Ooh.
All right. And so after all this, I'm going to go with something that Christine Peruski kind of hinted at last time, if you remember. So we're going to reverse the polarity back to 2005 with The Christmas Invasion. The 2005 Christmas special written by Russell T. Davies, interestingly enough. So Davies kind of, I think, stealing a little bit from himself, but, hey, as a writer, you can do that. So this is, of course, everybody knows this one. So there's not a lot of thing for me to go into the full detail on this one, but obviously this is where the newly regenerated 10th Doctor crash lands on London, meets up with Jackie and Mickey, and who they take him back to Jackie's flat, and basically talks about how his regeneration has gone wrong, and and then it's apparently the energy is luring an unseen foe toward him, and then all of a sudden, well, hey, this race called the Sycorax show up, demanding Earth's surrender and using blood control to cause a third of the world's population to go into a hypnotic state. Sounds familiar, right? The Sycorax threatened to make these people commit suicide unless half the world's population is given to the Sycorax as slaves. So, pretty similar ideas there. But of course, you got people like Harriet Jones, PM Flydale North. Yes, we know who you are. Attempting negotiations with the Sycorax, and then of course Rose making Jackie take the Doctor into the TARDIS, and which ends up being brought to the Sycorax ship. And the Doctor recovers because thanks to the inhaled fumes from a dropped thermos of tea that Jackie spilled, and because hey, tannin, it's good for you. And the Doctor shows up, confronts the Sycorax leader. They have a nice little sword fight, which is a little bit, not that great of a fight. But the Doctor's hand gets chopped off. But because it's the 15th, within the 15th hour of his regeneration, it regenerates. And then the Doctor takes a Satsuma out of his bathrobe, sends the leader packing. Because that's the kind of man he is, no second chances, and sends the Sycorax packing. And as they leave, Harriet orders Torchwood to destroy the ship, and the Doctor not very happy with that. Basically confronts her, but Harriet, tries to justify her actions, reminding the Doctor that he's not always there to save them. Sound a little familiar?
Yep.
A lot of common themes in this one.
Yes, there is.
So you kind of have to wonder, well, why didn't Torchwood just use Harriet Jones's thing and blow up, the 456? But maybe because they couldn't find them. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised too that the line "He looks tired, doesn't he?" wasn't whispered about Green.
Right. You think that would have been pretty funny? A little too on the nose, maybe, but
Yeah.
But yeah, that should be. Don't you think he looks tired? So PMs in the Doctor Who universe don't really have a good shelf life, apparently.
No, you don't.
So obviously the Doctor ends up getting his new clothes and joins everybody for Christmas dinner. And they watch as Harriet Jones is fending off rumors about her health with a vote of no confidence looming. And Rose who now trusts him. They go outside and get a bunch of Sycorax ash dropped on them like snow. And the Doctor points up at a star at their next destination, assuring her that will be, as in the words of his previous incarnation, fantastic. The end. All right. So that's my recommendation. And it's got a much more upbeat ending because it's Christmas. So if you need something to cleanse the palate after Torchwood Children of Earth to kind of bring you back up, and I recommend The Christmas Invasion. So, all right. Now, Jesse, now that we have a little extra time, did you want to talk about Russell T. Davies writing a lovely tribute to Elizabeth Sladen in the form of Farewell, Sarah Jane?
Only if I can try to not cry like a blithering baby.
Yeah. That's okay. We all cried listening to it. And anybody who says they didn't is lying.
Yeah. 10 out of 10 traveling forever in the TARDIS. And even though it's a funeral, that ending and just saying goodbye is just absolutely perfect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think Jesse's breaking up just thinking about it.
I am.
It was. And Holly, how about you? What did you make of Farewell, Sarah Jane?
I loved it. I mean, all the nods, and I was tearing up midway through. It's just like, and then having, it's like she's off traveling, and it's just like,
yeah.
And as I see her crying, it's like, okay, I was trying to hold it off, but now waterworks. I mean, it was. He did a fantastic.
Yeah, Russell D. Davies destroyed my wife with that.
And
as I played this for her,
and how brilliant that it works so well. All the characters, because of the our current situation, they had to film this, one-offs to edit together. And I think part of this is because we really lost that actress, right?
Right.
And
right.
so,
well, she died in 2011.
yes, but
Elizabeth Sladen.
But to have that, because you've really lost that such beloved person, it just was very powerful. And I will never ever be grateful that we are fighting this pandemic. But the ray of sunshine, the rainbow over the cloud, right, is that we have gotten some amazing creativity from the Doctor Who universe. Before we hit record, we were just talking about the concerts that we have seen, live, that musicians have shared with us. So the darkness, we are fighting this darkness through a lot of things, and I'm very grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not familiar with what hey, what are these guys talking about? You should be familiar with this, but if you're not, this is a 13-minute, 32-second video written by Russell T Davies, narrated by Jacob Dudman, who does a lot of the 11th Doctor, 12th Doctor, 9th. I forget. I forget what else he does, but he does impressions for narration for Big Finish audios.
Awesome.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he did a spectacular job. Lori, my wife was like, how did he do this all in one take? And I'm like, well, I don't know if he did it entirely in one take. Maybe they edited it together, but even if he did that all in one take, that's pretty impressive. That he was able to get through it and not break up himself personally. But this was something that debuted during the global rewatch of The Stolen Earth: Journey's End on April 19th, 2020. And we got a bunch of, in addition to Jacob Dudman narrating, we got some actual on-screen appearances. We got Katie Manning as Jo Jones, reprising her role as Jo Grant/Jones. Sophie Aldred returning as Dorothy Ace McShane.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy Knight reprising Luke Smith, with a notable reveal that, hey, by the time of the funeral, he's come out as gay. And so Luke comes out as gay, and which was something apparently Russell T Davies planned, but never got to do on the show. And he's apparently been happily married to Sanjay for the past 5 years. So mazel tov to you guys. Let's see. So we also had Daniel Anthony as Clyde Langer. Once again, Anjali Mohindra as Rani Chandra. And we also got Ronnie's mom, Geeta, played by Meena Anwar. And apparently some other Doctor Who universe characters make cameos of sorts in the story, including Ian and Barbara. So it's reassuring to know they're still around. Dodo Chaplet from the First Doctor Companion. Ben and Polly. And Victoria Waterfield from the Second Doctor. Liz Shaw. Dr. Grace Holloway from the Doctor Who TV movie with Paul McGann. Captain Jack Harkness makes an appearance, tosses off another salute. Kate Stewart from Unit shows up, probably representing her father, who knew Sarah Jane. And Sky Smith, who was a character that was introduced in the final season that got cut abruptly short of the Sarah Jane Adventures because of Elizabeth Sladen's untimely demise. She's there as well. And it's cool that, the Russell had them all team up to fight a group called the Jackals of the Backwards Clock. And so, of course, they get to fight off a threat. And one of the Sarah Jane Adventures villains, the Trickster, shows up, but they attempt to replace Earth with a sinister duplicate, but he gets swiftly defeated and shrunk into the size of a doll and locked in a treasure chest at the bottom of the Atlantic for the next 1,000 years. And we got another few revelations of note. Tegan and Nyssa, companions for the Fifth Doctor, were named at the funeral and are described as, quote, a nice couple from Australia.
Mhm.
Take that for what you will. That raised an eyebrow in yours truly because being such a Fifth Doctor fan. Um, Ace was seen leaving with K9 Mark IV. So if you're worried about what happened to K9 after Sarah Jane's passing, presumably he's with Ace now, which I think is very cool. And now I want to see Ace and K9 Adventures.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
That needs to happen.
A primitive
Martha,
need Nitro
Yep.
9.
Exactly. See, it writes itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And Martha and Mickey also showed up, and they apparently now have a son named August.
Mhm.
So congratulations to the Smiths, not the band, Mickey Smith and Martha Smith. And lastly, I think one of you mentioned that I think it was probably Holly, that Ronnie believes in her heart that Sarah Jane did not die, but was instead invited by the Doctor to come and explore time and space one last time, once again.
Yes,
So,
very nicely done.
So it's a lovely thought to think that that's how she left us, was traveling with the Doctor. Very fitting.
Yes, very, very nice.
All right. And other than that, we do have some listener feedback from David K. Proctor. We've been kind of saving his email for the past couple of weeks.
Yep.
So, Jesse, do you want to read it, or do you want me to?
No, I'll be glad to do it. And as we, this is, he talked about the whole series.
This is back on April 14th.
Yes,
he wrote to us. Yeah.
So, from David, I cannot believe this show. I've never seen this season before, so I didn't know what to expect. I know y'all said it was more grown up. I watched episode 1 and thought it was just more socially grown up, meaning adult language and subject matter. I saw some old school inappropriate behavior and language about same-sex relationships and racism. The line about adopting a Filipino and get them to clean the chimneys was simply shocking. But okay, we are watching a show about imperfect people trying to do good work. I get that. I see it all the time. It made the fantasy show have a more realistic feel. It was good to hear references to Unit and Martha Jones and to see Peter Capaldi. He is one of my favorite doctors. From there, the show went awry. I put this up there with the fourth Indiana Jones movie for the abomination this show turned into. Peter Capaldi's character committing murder-suicide, and Captain Jack Harkness torturing his own grandchild to death. Then he ran away. I'm fine with dark. If this wasn't part of the Doctor Who universe, I might have been able to enjoy it. Maybe. I see the discussion y'all had at the last Doctor Who episode in a different light. I don't think anything could sour my opinion of anything Who. I've certainly seen several of those I can skip, but nothing to poise an entire series so thoroughly. And that includes the finals of Star Wars and the final Sopranos. God
Disagree.
help me. I've been planning this email for days, wanting to praise a show and find something to fill that space where Who goes at least until we get more. I'm sorry, but I can't. I'm no longer looking forward to seeing Harkness in the future. Who? It's like having a racist grandfather. You love him, but dread seeing him because of all you can think is that big stain. If you're to watch something awesome that is ruined in the end, I'll pop in Blazing Saddles or Ad Asteria or Ender's Game.
Ad Astra. Yeah.
I pray y'all all redeem the show so I can give it another try. Thanks for keeping us entertained. You are a bright spot each week. Keep up the good work. Stay well. Thanks, David K. Proctor.
Well, thank you, David, for writing in. We totally respect your opinion. Hopefully, we've given you a little bit more to think about, because we, as uncomfortable and ugly as some of the events that take place, I think it's a good story, personally.
Yeah.
But if you don't think so, you're perfectly entitled to your opinion. I personally like it. So, like I said, I do respect your opinion, and I hope we give you some things to think about. And thank you so much for writing in and listening.
As always, yes, thank you so much, and thank you for the kind words. We are trying to keep you entertained. So, Charles, if someone wants to give us feedback, how can they?
Well, Jesse, they can write to us, just like David K. Proctor did. Drop us a line at nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. That's nextstopeverywheresmg for Southgate Media Group @gmail.com. Or you can drop us a line on the Twitter machine at nextstopsmg, or on Facebook, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, which we are closing in on 350 likes. You guys are like come out of nowhere, so thanks for that, and hopefully we got a bunch of new listeners out there. And so, hi everybody, and also on Instagram at Next Stop Everywhere Podcast. Please check us out there. And Holly, where can they reach you?
Okay, they can reach me at the fiveishfangirls.com, and that's the part of the podcast in it. Me personally, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at hollymac_79.
Yeah, please, everybody, check out the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. They're always wonderful to us. Holly and Rachel come on. We miss having Rachel. We haven't had Rachel on for a while. So, Rachel, if you're out there, come on back. We miss you. And Holly, you're obviously welcome to come back anytime because we always love talking to you. So please, why don't you everybody support them in return since they're so kind to us. And Jesse, how about you? Where can they reach you on the interwebs?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. You can find me on Facebook, and I like every 3 months I put something on Instagram. You can hear me talk Titans and DC Universe shows with Charles in Titan Talk, that podcast. If you just picked up DC Universe because you're looking for stuff to binge, you can do that. We are also, Charles and I talk on the Fandom Zone podcast. We just did an episode where we talked about our suggestions on binging. But if you are catching up on Krypton or The Boys or Watchmen, we have episodes about there. And then if you go even further, there are discussions of other shows that he and friend of the show, Karen Lindsay, have done. And then finally, you can hear me on Set Listing Bruce, the Bruce Springsteen podcast, where I talk to Bruce Springsteen fans from around the world. And coming up, we are going to have our big Does Mary Get in the Car discussion that I think is going to be fun. Yes. And Charles, where can they hear more of your fine work? And isn't there a blog that might cover some of these things?
You're just all kinds of adorable once again. All right. As for me, you can reach me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on the Instagrams, or Facebook at Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot. We're going to talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere. Your Doctor Who, your Torchwood, your Sarah Jane Adventures, all kinds of comic book sci-fi news of my other podcasts they do for Southgate Media, including the aforementioned Titan Talk, the Titans podcast that I do with Jesse, the Fandom Zone podcast that I also do with Jesse, where we talk comic book TV shows, and Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast that I do with Zan Sprouse, whom you've heard here on Next Stop Everywhere, as we talk about all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch, etc., and have a lot of fun doing that. So everybody, please check those out. I know Zan would appreciate it. I know Jesse would appreciate it. And obviously, I would definitely appreciate it. And thank you so much if you support those shows. Otherwise, come on back. We've had Torchwood Month, but Torchwood Month is officially concluded. We're going back to Doctor Who.
So Charles, what
at long last?
Yeah, next week. Where is the TARDIS? Where is the TARDIS taking us?
I was already rolling there. So next time on Next Stop Everywhere, come on back for episode 183, as we, meaning our partners in time, yours truly and Jesse Jackson, are going to be joined by another special guest companion whom you've heard here on Next Stop Everywhere by the name of DJ Nick, returning to the podcast to discuss our first Doctor adventure, The War Machines.
Ooh.
So if you've been missing us talking Doctor Who for the past month, your patience is going to be rewarded as we're going all the way back, way back, to quote the 11th Doctor, to the William Hartnell era, a story, a fun one from his final season, season 4, with an adventure that debuted companions Ben Jackson and Polly Wright, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And we got DJ Nick joining us. So Jesse, I hope you're able to go into some sort of classic Doctor Who streaming service or something so that we can discuss this.
Yeah, I can't believe we're the only podcast that has the courage to go from Torchwood to Classic Who. None of the other podcasts have that courage. None of them have that determination. But that's right. Charles and I, with our guest companions, we're doing this thing.
Yeah. So if you missed DJ Nick, or you just missed us talking Doctor Who, please come on back. Episode 183 of Next Stop Everywhere, as we discuss the War Machines. Come on back. It's going to be good. And Holly, thank you so much for joining us here on Next Stop Everywhere. Hope you had fun. At least our audio held up this time.
Yes, I had a blast. I enjoyed letting you guys have me come on and talk with you. I absolutely enjoy it.
I know that Charles and I both are in agreement. Anytime, we love having you with us, and we appreciate it. Charles, this was a fun month, and I'm really excited to go back to Classic Who. This is going to be a really fun journey.
Yep. So dust off those old DVDs as we're going back in time to 1966 as we talk the War Machines right here, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.